There's a pattern and a practice of Donald Trump being emboldened in terms of his conduct after playing criminal Houdini and getting away with things. I know that the Justice Department prosecutes crimes and criminals, not patterns. But from your vantage point, how important is it to hold him accountable if he did indeed commit the crimes that the January 6th committee appears to be building a case to illustrate that he did?
Well, Nicole, you just heard my views back in the day when, unfortunately, my predictions proved true. You know, you're exactly right in the through line of Donald Trump's behavior. The day after he thought he got away with the first investigation and was in the clear for interfering with the 2016 election, the very next day he tries to interfere with the 2020 election by getting Ukraine to manufacture dirt on his most feared opponent, Joe Biden. Then we go through that whole process. He does not get impeached, as we know in impeachment 1. And then he has no illusions about being held responsible. So even when we go through all the evidence of him knowing he lost the election, he still won't give it up because, as I unfortunately predicted, he put his own personal and political interests over the interests of the country and all of those close to him. So it's imperative that the Department of Justice act if there is evidence of him committing crimes. And I can speak to that for sure, not only to deter him, to deter anyone else who is in that position, either in the office of the presidency and loses an election, or all these other people who are not only saying that they would interfere with an election, but they're running for political office on that campaign principle. People have to know that even if they hold political office, if they violate the law by interfering with an election, undermining our most central principle of our democracy, free and fair elections, that they could and would be prosecuted. So it is critical that the department act.
So in terms of the evidence that the committee has marshaled, can you help us understand why they seem to be so far ahead of where we believe DOJ to be?
Listen, what I can say is the committee's done an enormously effective job. They do have an independent Department of Justice, which did hold witnesses in contempt for not honoring their subpoena. So the department gave them a huge assist by making people know that they will be held accountable if they don't appear. So they've appeared and had to tell the truth, or they could be prosecuted for perjury. So that has been important. And I think the department may not have realized the extent of the evidence showing the culpability of Donald Trump directly as well as circumstantially. So we don't know everything the department is doing, but what is clear is that what the committee has done is give them a trial run. All of these witnesses are now available to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice has far greater tools than the committee. They not only have subpoena power from a grand jury, they can get warrants, they can do all sorts of things. So I think whatever the timing, the department now has a huge leg up that it would have on most investigations to follow up on the great work of the January 6th committee. And they know a lot now where the evidence takes them. And that is to one person at the top of the conspiracy that shows overwhelming evidence, not only of the former president's acts to interfere with the election and the certification of those results, but also his criminal intent. Right. I think there's tremendous evidence, which I'm happy to speak to, about why we know Donald Trump had to know what he was doing was wrong. And it's not simply because he was told he lost the election, but he did things that, regardless of the dispute about the election, could never be right. So I think for all of those reasons, the work of the committee has been tremendously helpful. We can go back and second guess why the department didn't do more earlier. But I think what's most important is the evidence is now out there and available for everyone, including the Department of Justice.
You know, I think about the excuses that Republican senators offered for not convicting Donald Trump in the first trial. I think was it just Mitt Romney who voted to convict? Just one or two Republicans?
In the second trial, there were 7.
There were 7. So the criminality became too blatant for at least one, and then 7 in the second, which is a stain on the Republican Party forever. But one of the excuses that the Republican senators who voted to acquit hung those acquittal votes on was a lack of firsthand witnesses. This committee has firsthand witnesses, spilling into the aisles. What do you make of sort of the distinction between the ability to gather testimony from these sort of insiders in terms of making the case and, as you said, proving Trump's intent?
I think you put your finger right on what's significant. Let me take a step back. What we heard from the Republican senators were two things. One, you've proven your case. That was a dereliction of duty. He clearly violated his oath, but we don't have jurisdiction because he's a former president, which was a technicality. And I think we would have had more than enough Republican senators without that. The other is, they wanted to know what happened during the attack. They were very concerned. Did the president truly simply sit on his hands and cheer on the insurrectionists? Did he incite them further with knowledge when he sent his tweet about Mike Pence and continued to reiterate that the election was supposedly stolen? And so I think direct witnesses would have helped tremendously. We had circumstantial evidence. We had some direct evidence about his conversations with Kevin McCarthy and the like. But I think now, whether you're talking about Republican senators or people who are Republicans, independent, or Democrats, but care about our democracy, care about what's right, I think this upcoming hearing is so critical because it is the culmination of the former president's plan. And when you have questions about his intent, if it is true, and they have direct evidence from his former White House counsel and those closest to him, the best witnesses in any trial, if we have those witnesses saying that he was there, he saw on TV what was happening, he heard the reports, he knew he caused it, and then he showed glee and happiness it was happening, said they obviously care more than people like Kevin McCarthy. He was happy to hear about attacks on his vice president. He not only then refused to send in help or do anything, but he incited them further. That text about Mike Pence, which you could hear the crowd react to it so loudly, which we spent a lot of time on, and caused all these brave officers to get further attacked. And I spoke to many of those officers. It was horrible what they went through. And that he then took further action. Even when he released more information, he reiterated the lie. He said he loved these people. They were patriots. Again and again and again, he took action that I think anybody with just, a sensibility, a sense of humanity has to say that is wrong. But more fundamentally, from a criminal justice process, that is sort of the home run evidence. That's what you want to see. It shows the culmination of the scheme in a way that's going to affect any jury. It reveals his intent, and there can be no claim that he was trying to do the right thing. So I think this last hearing is, in fact, a high point of what we're seeing from the January 6th committee.
Wow. I want to play some of Cassidy Hutchinson speaking to exactly what you're articulating, which was his state of mind as the deadly insurrection was underway.
I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, the rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now. And Mark looked up at him and said, he doesn't want to do anything, Pat. And Pat said something to the effect of, and very clearly had said this to Mark, something to the effect of, Mark, something needs to be done or people are going to die and the blood's going to be on your effing hands.
So, Barry, what I want to understand is the White House counsel, the most senior legal advisor in the White House, says that not only is Trump culpable, but Mark Meadows will be responsible. What sort of legal, poo-poo platter is Mark Meadows contending with based on the evidence that's been presented by the 1-6 committee?
Great question. Let me just say, too, the most damning evidence in a trial is from witnesses who don't have an axe to grind. And remember, Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, loyal Trump ally, defended him in the first impeachment against us. And the fact that he's doing it makes it powerful. Conspirators have co-conspirators. And assuming the evidence is what it appears to be about Donald Trump's culpability and his conspiracy to interfere with the work of Congress to certify the election, Mark Meadows was right there with him. And we've heard evidence saying that he knew that the election wasn't stolen. He knew that they should admit defeat. So the fact that he, as there is some evidence of, and seems to be there may be more that we hear on Thursday, that he actually encouraged and took actions, that makes him a co-conspirator. It doesn't require much more than that. Knowledge, intent, and some action. So Mark Meadows would also be someone subject to an investigation and potentially culpable for crimes.
I asked Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren who I had a chance to speak to the day that Pat Cipollone was there, if he didn't invoke his Fifth Amendment right at all. She said not at all. I mean, what's being revealed by the committee is who the bad actors were, who, as you just said, the co-conspirators were. And they're the folks that have either defied their subpoenas or partially complied, people like Meadows, or people who seem to have invoked the Fifth at every turn, people like John Eastman and Mike Flynn and others. What is the strategy for prosecuting a conspiracy? I mean, you've got, like almost a baker's dozen of pardoned ex-Trump cronies. You've got Trump himself. How do you approach a criminal conspiracy with those actors?
So that's exactly the right question. So a couple things. First, you want to always be focused. Who is necessarily the linchpin of the conspiracy? Who's at the top? And I think everyone should agree that that would be the former president. And then you work backwards. So you have the range of people who were involved, suggesting actions that they knew were wrong and would interfere with an election in ways that could violate the law. So I think what you're looking at are who are the witnesses most culpable, who could ultimately become cooperating witnesses. John Eastman had a raid of his house pursuant to a search warrant. He's somebody who could say, you know what, I'm going to make a deal. I'm prepared to provide testimony. You have other people who also along the way who seem to be extremely culpable and who would be valuable witnesses against the ultimate goal of any criminal prosecution, that is to prosecute the person at the head of the conspiracy, even if there's someone no one heard of, let alone a former president. So it has nothing to do with his prior position, it's his culpability. So I think what they're going to be looking at are both who could be part of a case. So again, an indictment also often involves multiple defendants. So who do they think helps them prove their case and has their own criminal culpability, while at the same time keeping an eye which of these potential defendants may decide to make a deal, become a cooperator, and then join Team USA in testifying against others in the conspiracy for a deal for themselves.